Welcome back to the Starting Strength series. I'm Mark Rippetoe, and today our guest for this special edition of the Starting Strength series is Eva Twardokens. Eva is a former member of the U.S. Olympic team in 92 and 94. We'll have her sort that out for us in a minute. And was a downhill skier for the United States Olympic team. We are doing a rush job on this thing because we're trying to get it up on the web in a timely manner so you guys can use this information, the stuff we're going to talk about today, to help you more enjoyably watch the event as it happens. So what we're going to talk about today is going to be a whole bunch of stuff that probably you haven't ever been asked about before. First, thank you, darling.
You're welcome.
For being here with us.
Thank
Came
you for
all
being
the way out
interested.
from Santa Cruz. Oh, we're terribly interested in this. First, let's talk about your particular personal history with the sport and with the Olympics. You were in the first Olympics in '92, and then again in '94, and that would be the first year in which they started staggering the two events, right?
I got a little bit lucky. I was available for the Olympics actually in Sarajevo in '84, and at that time they didn't take a full squad. And I was a young kid, and at the time I was like, yeah, it's okay, you know, I have Calgary in '88. And before '88, I blew my knee out. So '92 was the first Olympics that I took part in, and I had been on the U.S. ski team for 8 years, so it was a long wait. And so the staggering thing, having '94 come along, was kind of a bonus I felt like I deserved.
How do you get on the U.S. ski team?
Well, you buy some Kellogg's cereal and you send in 10 box tops and with your address, and if they choose you from eating this cereal, then you get to know. Getting on the U.S. ski team is basically the U.S. ski team looking at your junior results.
Right.
They invite you to a camp. We call it a shootout camp. They invite when I made the team, they invited 30 girls to Mount Hood in the summer, and we did giant slalom time trials, and they picked 10 out of the 30. And then they brought us back for a slalom camp, and out of that 10, they picked 5. And that was what we called the Europa Cup team and the junior team.
So when did you start skiing?
I started skiing when I was 3 years old.
3?
Yeah.
I was not walking. No, I think I was walking.
You were probably walking.
I was probably walking.
Maybe not you.
I was talking.
Well, sure you were talking.
I was talking by the time I was 3. So you started skiing. Well, tell us a little bit about why a person would start skiing when they were 3 years old. It had something to do with parents, probably.
Right. Well, my parents are from European descent. They have a little bit different attitude than American parents, and they actually pushed me pretty hard from an early age. My father saw that I had some talent in moving around when I was really, really small. They were both ski instructors. They didn't want to hire a babysitter. My dad was a real believer that the family was a unit, and if they were working at the ski area, then I was going to the ski area. And they would go teach classes, and they'd put skis on my feet, and I'd walk around the flats, you know, when I was 3 years old, and just getting used to being on the boards. Getting used to sliding in a flat area. And then, you know, I progressed from there. I started to, you know, go up a hill and really slide and start to turn. And the mountain was my babysitter for a long time.
Where was this?
This was in Nevada at Mount Rose, a ski area called Mount Rose.
Is this close to?
It's about 45 an hour away from Reno, and that's where we lived.
Right.
Yeah.
So they would drive up there on a regular basis, I'm assuming, for 6, 7 months of the year, and teach and stuff. Your father's an exercise physiologist. Where was he?
He's a kinesiologist and a professor in kinesiology and biomechanics at the University of Nevada.
Right.
So
is he still on faculty there, or
no, he's retired.
He's emeritus now, or is he just retired?
He's retired.
Right.
So he was doing some writing, but he's retired now.
Right.
So
you were skiing from a very young age, and in '92 at the Olympics, you were on the alpine skiing team. Tell us about all the little particulars that get missed in sportcasting. Alpine skiing consists of what events?
Well, alpine racing consists of downhill. Downhill is when you see the racers hold the tuck, the egg-shaped position, for most of the course, and it's the fastest. The next, I'll go by the fastest down to the, and it has the least amount of turns. Then there's Super G, and Super G is a little bit turnier. Use a little bit shorter ski.
That stands for Super Giant Slalom?
Super Giant Slalom, yes. And then the next event down is called Giant Slalom, which is just big turns, usually about 40 turns down the mountain. And and then slalom is very short turns. In fact, sometimes you're making more than one turn per second.
How long does a downhill race take?
A downhill can be about anywhere from like a minute 20 to 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
And a Super G?
A Super G is usually about a minute 30 to a minute 50. Depends on the mountain.
Slalom's a little slower.
Well, now when you get into giant slalom and slalom, you're talking about 2 runs. You have your first run at 10 a.m. in the morning, around that, and the second run at 1 o'clock, and it's a combined time. So it's more like each run is about a minute to a minute 30 in giant slalom. In slalom, it's around 45 seconds to a minute. But you've got 2 runs, and you have to qualify in the first run of slalom and giant slalom to get a second run.
To get the second run for that day. Qualification is based on? First
run standings of 30 people.
Average of that, or best time of it?
Best time of the day, place down to 30. If you got 31st place and you were 1/100th out, you're done for the day.
Right. Okay, so that's 4 events then. So there's downhill, Super G, slalom, giant slalom, and slalom, and then there's a combined event.
Then there's 5 events. So then there's the combined event, which takes the biggest turns and the smallest turns and puts the event together. So you do a run of downhill, and they call it a super combined. So the downhill is made a little bit easier for the slalom skiers, and the slalom is a little bit easier for the downhillers. So it's basically it's the opposite sides of the spectrum. The full speed event and the turniest event, and they get a winner out of that.
And if you're competing in the combination events called the super combined, if you're competing in super combined, then an athlete competing in those, in other words, you can't enter the slalom and the downhill, combine the times, and have that as a total for the super combined, right?
No, the super
combined. It's a separate event.
It's a separate race.
Because the courses are slightly different.
The courses are slightly different.
The 2 elements are altered a little bit to average them out.
Right.
Okay.
And always in super giant slalom, and slalom, it's a one-shot deal. You inspect the course and you race. In downhill, there's training runs that work up to the downhill, and the rule is you have to have at least 1 training run down the course to be able to race.
To ensure that you don't get slaughtered on the way down. You need
and it's a
some
safety
familiarity.
issue. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, because I'm real interested in the procedures that actually occur before the actual you come out of the start house and go down the slope. The part we see on TV, a lot of stuff happens before then that's never discussed. We want to talk about that at some length. So alpine skiing consists of those 5 events.
Yes.
Right. Well, I guess let's just go ahead and talk about. I want to talk about equipment quite a bit as well, and I want to make sure that we kind of get into some detail about that. But let's talk about what goes on before the part you see on TV. You get there when?
You get there at 7:30 in the morning.
Let's say you're racing on a Thursday. When do you arrive at the venue?
At the venue, 7:30 in the morning.
You're not there at all before then,
right? The day before, you're allowed to take. They sometimes open the course. Not the course. The course is not set the day before. Put it that way. Right. They open the hill for free skiing, so you get to take.
You get to kind of see what they could make out of it.
You could just get the feel for the terrain mostly, and the acceleration of the hill.
Well, say if you're competing on a Thursday, when do you arrive in Vancouver? If you're at the Olympics, what would happen here?
A lot of teams do it differently. You know, I was a person that I wanted to be at the opening ceremonies.
Right.
And when we were in Lillehammer, my coach brought me in for the opening ceremonies, and then we left Lillehammer and we went to another venue to do some training, because there's a lot of
So a couple of weeks, perhaps.
We had a good 5-6 days away.
Right.
Before our event. Our events, the alpine events, especially the technical events, happen at the end of the Olympics. So they usually pull us away from the riffraff.
Well, we were on the way over here today, and the men's downhill is in progress right now.
Correct.
So, but it's not the end of the Olympics. What do you mean by that?
Well, the men's downhill is at the beginning of the Olympic Games.
Right.
Like it was supposed to be on Saturday, and here we are on Monday. They had weather issues, and the last day of the Olympics, I think, is February 27th. So they've got to run men's downhill, women's downhill, men's combined, women's combined, Super G for both men and women, GS for both men and women, slalom for both men and women. So you're looking at, 10 days of competition.
Right.
And
so there'll be somebody on the big hill every day, all day long.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you get there 5-6 days ahead. You guys were at the opening ceremony.
Yeah.
You go someplace else to train.
Yep.
Your event is, say, on a Thursday.
Yep. We'd come in.
You show back up Wednesday, right?
No, we would show back up like a Monday, Tuesday.
Right.
And start using the training hill that's there.
Right.
Do you just want to familiarize yourself with
the
not
general
only the
surroundings,
but the
right.
general surroundings and what lift you're going to use? You time, like how long does it take to get up the chairlift, and so you need to know all that stuff.
Right. So there aren't any handling issues the day of the race.
Which
right?
happened.
Sure.
It happened to me on my Olympic debut. So you find out how long the lift takes to take you up. You find out where the training hill is. You get a feel for the training hill. You get your free ski run the day before. The day of the race, you arrive at like 7:30. And
now your free ski run day before means course has been set.
No, course has not been set.
You're just on the hill.
You're just on the hill.
One time.
One time.
On the hill.
One or two. They check your bib at the start. You get 2 free ski runs down.
Okay, so that's on the hill without the course laid.
Right.
Course is available next morning.
Course is available next morning. And there's an inspection time.
Right.
It's usually 1 hour. They open the gate. If you're there late, you're disqualified. You can't make any turns on the hill. You can just side slip down. So before that, though,
explain that.
Well, basically, you're inspecting the course and you're looking at how they've set the gates.
You're not actually running the course.
You can't.
You're sliding down the side of the course.
You can slide in the course, but you can't make any turns. You can only side slip.
Just go down and look.
Go down and look slow. Like I've seen athletes break into turns, and the technical delegate says, "Boom, you're out of here." Because people like to
disqualify you from the run
if you make too many turns. Yeah.
Right.
Or there'll be complaints, or there'll be protests about the race.
Right.
But before you even get to inspection, you do warm up. And so you take, like, on a short, abbreviated course, your coach sets a course, and sometimes they get a chance to see what they've set for the race, and they try to set the same rhythm. And you take maybe 3 or 4 runs to warm up in the gates, and then you head up for inspection, and you look at the course, and you're looking at the terrain, and you're looking at any trouble spots there might be. You're checking out the snow. The snow conditions can be, and especially here in Vancouver, it's been soft, so they might even put chemicals on the snow. So there might be some parts that are rock hard, and there might be some parts that are soft.
Right.
And you're going to need to know what that is, where those spots might be. And you look at the rhythm of the course, and you look where you can gain speed, where you can let it run out, and where you're going to really have to plan ahead to make the turns. So you almost memorize the course. I wasn't a course memorizer. I was a rhythm memorizer, and I was a sticky section sort of memorizer. Like, I was better if I didn't think too much. So the most difficult parts of the course I went over pretty much in detail, and otherwise it was right and left.
And you can get all of this from just side slipping down the side of the hill.
You don't really know what it's going to be like the more experienced you are at looking at courses. It's kind of like golf, where you have to read the terrain.
You learn how to read the thing after having been down a lot of hills.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the rhythm of the course. What is the rhythm of the course, and how would you determine that from just a casual observation, the cursory observation on the way down?
Well, sometimes, now I'm watching the coaches, and they're really technical with the athletes. They measure, and they can find out what the distance between the gates is.
Right.
And so
the gate distance.
The distance away. And
the slalom poles are set up.
Versus the vertical.
Right.
And they could say, hey, guys, it looks like this course, a lot of it's at 26 meters.
Now, 26 meters would be the distance along the ground.
Yes.
Between the gates.
Gate.
Not the vertical relief distance, but the distance along the ground.
Right.
The distance the skis would be in contact with snow between gates.
Yes, yes.
And that distance determines the course rhythm.
Yes. So if I wasn't in that era where they could tell you, hey, Eva, today the rhythm looks like it's about 26 meters, and I would be able to tattoo it in my brain. Like, I know what 26 meters feels like. And that's one of the, I think, the really cool things the ski team. I saw in one of the movies they made on the team, the coach talking about the distance of the gates to the athletes, and I think that's really smart.
Is it, at the time you were skiing, that wasn't allowed to be?
No, it was. No. It just wasn't, it wasn't thought up yet.
Really?
It might have been on other teams, but my team wasn't doing it.
It hadn't occurred to anybody that the distance between the gates would make it...
Well, you look at the gates and you would approximate it, and the coaches kind of left it up to the athletes to figure out what the rhythm of the course was. Right. Plus, when you get to the top of the course, there's forerunners that run the race before, and you get radio reports like, hey, this is running really quick, you know? It's 26 meters, but it's pretty straight, so you don't have to set up the turns very much.
Right. So a forerunner is like somebody that tests the course for you.
Yeah.
And that information is available to everybody in the heat?
Yes, everybody in the run.
Everybody in the run.
The coaches radio up to the athletes. The only thing is the forerunner is not allowed to talk to athletes.
He can only tell the coaches.
He can only tell the technical delegates.
Oh,
and basically, if you're a forerunner, you come down, the technical delegate comes over to you and says, what do you think? And you say, it's fine. If there's a major danger in the course, like, wow, there's a big stump in gate number 8, you guys got to change it, then that's what the forerunner is for.
Okay. Well, so you're going to go down the hill then, on the side of the hill as a slow observer one time that morning.
You can go in between the gates. You can stand where you would approximate you're going to be in the race.
Right.
And look at what direction you need to go for the next one.
So then, when that preparatory phase that morning is over with, the run starts
right
at 9:30, did you say?
10 o'clock. So inspection would be something like inspection is from 8:30 to 9:30. Run starts at 10.
Right.
Bib number 1 goes out start at 10 o'clock on the dot. To the second.
Okay. And what determines the length of time between leaving the gate?
Television. Mostly.
Really? Really?
And also, well, you could run a giant slalom at a 45-second interval between racers.
Right.
But for television, they make it a minute and a half so they can film everyone's full run. And have a little time in between to talk about that.
So they'll have a little segue time built into the deal, and the coverage determines it.
It's kind of a pain in the butt.
Well, at a lower level meet, would you use a 45-second interval?
You'd maybe use like a 1-minute interval.
Right. Okay.
So there'll be 2 people on the course at one time, but
right.
one's at the top and one's just getting down.
But for the Olympics, that stagger is going to be determined by their video format.
They tell you the night before, tomorrow the intervals for the first 30 women are 1 minute 30.
Okay.
And after 30, they're going to drop it down to 1 minute.
Okay.
So, like, if you're starting bib number 45, you know how much time you have.
Why would they drop it to?
Because there's as the way the seeding goes, the best racers are in the top 30,
okay.
And then after that, they might not care.
Okay. What determines the seeding?
Well,
scores coming into the meet from previous competitions,
based on your amount of time that you have raced off the winner of the races before, the World Cup races that have occurred before the Olympics. So it's a point system,
right.
And the lower, if your points are 0, you're the best skier in the world.
Right.
And that's how they rank skiers on the FIS list, which is the Federation International Skiing.
In some language other than English.
In French, yeah.
Right. So if 9:30 rolls around, they get you guys off the hill, right? Then I'm assuming they do some grooming and some other preparation. Make sure that the hill is ready to go. Yep. We'll talk about that some more in a moment. First person comes, 10 o'clock rolls around, okay? There's a start house at the top. How big is the start house?
The start house is about like a garden shed. It's I would say maybe
like 10 by 10, something
yeah,
like that.
10 by 10. Sometimes a little bit
Got
bigger.
a heater?
No.
No heater?
No heater.
Right. There's a TD inside the starting shed.
There's a start delegate at the start. And a timer.
Right.
The guy in charge of timing. And
can you have a handler there?
You can have one handler into the start house.
One handler, your coach or...
Right. Before you even get in the start house, though, you come in, you check your clock, You say if I was running number 10, then I know I had 15 minutes from the first person where I'm going.
Right.
So I've timed it all the way from the bottom of the hill. I've timed the chairlift, how long time it's going to take me to ski down. I get there, I talk to some people, how's it running, and what are the course reports been like. Usually my technician will talk to me a little bit about how it's going. And then as we get closer, like say 5 minutes before, my technician will wave me down. I'll go up and he'll put me into my skis, make sure my bindings are good. He'll wipe down my skis, wipe down my edges, make sure that everything is going to slide well. And then he's usually, my rep's usually my handler. There's usually a coach there. But you talk to them the night before, like who you like. Because your coach could annoy the crap out of you, and so you don't want them there. So you decide who you want to go in with you, and you strip down. Everything we have has zippers on it, so you can zip down to your race suit. Mm-hmm. You've got your goggle guy there who probably leaves you alone to go in with your handler in the last minute. And
this is standing outside the start house?
Yeah, all outside.
All right. So they take your warm-ups off.
Yep.
And then you're called into start house.
They don't even call you, and you know that you can slide in. Someone else has left.
They just left.
It's your place.
Start house is empty. Now it's your turn.
And you've got your
all your
handler.
stuff is outside. Mm-hmm. You're in there, skis on, handler with you.
Yep. He's talking to you, giving your last...
Helmets all in place.
Helmets in place.
Goggles are up.
Goggles can be up or down, depending on the weather. If it's foggy or if it's pretty moist out, that could be a last-minute thing. What you do is put your goggles down. Once you start moving, usually the fog goes away. And you're just...
So the goggles, that's an interesting... I've been wondering about... It seems to me like you're standing there without any wind on you. Those things are going to fog up.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you've warmed up and you're a little sweaty.
So they're going to fog.
Yeah.
When you come out of the start house and get into the staging area, what is that area called right there at the gate?
You mean...
It's just called walk out of the start house. Here's the gate, right?
The first gate?
The timer flat.
Oh, it's in the start house.
Oh, that's actually in the house
itself.
There's
the start house consists
I'm watching
of
something different, I suppose.
There's a pole you'll see, and there's a little stick that goes across, and then there's a clock.
Right, and that's your barrier for the time. And
the timer will say, so this is where you're kind of shaking your goggles out, making sure they're clear. You're making sure your poles are on right. You're still trying to stay warm, and the start house delegate will say 1 minute. Racer number 10, you have 1 minute. And so you're still. At 1 minute. I'm still like. It's kind of like you have time to think about it.
Right.
1 minute's a long time, so you're still sitting back. Then it'll say 30 seconds, and at this time different things happen. Like the girl in front of you might have fallen and broken her leg, and then all of a sudden they'll say you've got a minute and a half. At that time,
if they got to evac somebody off the hill, the sequence is
if
interrupted.
Someone's going home in a body bag, they'll pull you out. So, and then that's when your handler will pull you out. They'll put your clothes back on, and just help you wait. But if things are continuing as normal, 10 seconds, 30. then he'll give you 30 seconds, then he'll say 10 seconds. That's when, for me, it's go time. And I'm putting my poles into the holes that are on the other side of the wand, and then from then, nobody really talks to you. It's all sound. So at 10 seconds, you hear beep, and then 5 seconds goes by, and then at 5 seconds, you hear the timer go off by seconds.
5,
4, 3, 2, 1. Beep. It has a high beep, but
that's your clearance to go.
You can go any time within the 5 seconds countdown,
right?
And you only have 5 seconds. I think someone might bust me for this. You only have 5 seconds after that high beep to get out of there.
So you got a 10-second window.
Yeah.
Defined by the 5 seconds prior to the zero time, and then 5 more seconds.
Right.
And time starts at the wand.
Right.
You left the house.
Right.
Are you cold?
No, because you've been warming up. You've been jumping around.
What are you wearing?
You're wearing your downhill suit, which
consists of?
Well, people think it's Lycra, but it's super high-tech material. The fastest suit would be rubber. Because no air gets through it.
Right.
But it's dangerous, because you get hot and then you get cold and people get sick.
Right.
It's also dangerous if you hit the deck, it slides.
Right.
It's like you almost accelerate if you fall. So there are, at least when I was racing, I don't know if things have changed, there's material that the more it stretches, the less it lets air in. And those are the suits we wear, and they're not easy to put on. You'd think they're really stretchy, but they're they're really tight. And basically, it lets just enough air in. In fact, the suits get tested if they're legal, and they get a plumb put on them. And that's actually one thing that happens at the start. The start referee looks and see if your suit's plumbed. And there's been times where the girls...
So just a little symbol that says that this is a legal suit.
Sometimes it'll pop off and it won't be there. He'll mark it down and say, oh, this person had an illegal suit on. Or you have to take the suit down after, the same suit down after, and they'll test it, and it was a plumb suit.
So it keeps you from feeling the wind necessarily on your skin.
It's aerodynamic.
Right.
So the suit's tight.
You're going down the hill.
So
it's quiet, I'm assuming.
Not really. I mean, in the start, when you're about to go out of the start, there's the crowd there.
Right.
And you can hear them, and you can hear the announcer.
At the Olympics, I would have,
Yeah, you can
low-level meet, it's quiet.
Pretty quiet, yeah. Like your coaches are yelling, come on, come on, get sight, get sight.
And you're perceiving this, or you mainly...
That's
really the question.
Okay, well, the question about perception is an interesting one. For me, if I didn't remember anything about my run, that it was a blur, a blank, it was fast.
Well, I'll bet.
If I could remember my coach waving on the side, if I can remember hearing the announcer say what my split time was.
Right. Then you were perceiving something other than what was going on.
I was too conscious.
Right.
And the idea is to, you want to be in that in the state where, for me, I was always the fastest, where I was like, God, they said, you almost fell on the 5th gate up there. Do you remember that? No.
You're just thinking with your feet.
You're thinking
with your body. Thinking with your knees.
Just get down this mountain, and you're thinking, I'm gonna chew these gates up, and I'm gonna kill it, you know. And so that's at least my attitude. And when I skied well and when I was fast, I had kind of the killer instinct. And for my coaches knew what to say to me. My best coaches say, you know what to do. You're a great skier. Use your instincts and go.
Just go. No cues.
There was something
instructions.
Really tough, use your instinct other than the second knoll. You've really got to set that up. Otherwise, just blast it. That would be a course report.
Okay. So as you're going down the hill, equipment is obviously something at that point that you don't think about. That should have been thought about before by somebody else, probably.
Well, if you're screwing up, you're like, there's times where you're like, wow, I can't get my skis to come around. Then you're thinking about your equipment.
So when you're going down fast, do you perceive the skis? Maybe that's a silly question, but I mean, what about them do you feel? You feel the edge cut?
You can feel the edge cutting. You feel how clean your turns are. You do perceive that. And you know that the cleaner you make the turn and the better you slice in the snow and the less spray that comes out from under your skis, the more speed is going into your projection.
Right. I'm obviously completely, I've never skied before, so this is kind of an interesting thing for me because I really don't even know what questions they ask. I'm just guessing. But as you get faster and faster, when do you peak speed during that run?
There isn't a peak speed. It's always up and down. It depends on the...
varies with the turns and how much energy got absorbed into the turn, right?
Like there's course setters
so you decelerate, accelerate, decelerate, accelerate all the way down.
Depending on how to get through the course. And there's some course setters that set up traps. Like, this course is gonna be for the thinkers today. This course is gonna be the people that are aware. And they'll get you going really fast and then they'll set a gate way to the side. And you should see this in inspection, but you never really know how it's gonna run. And if he sets you up with some straight gates where you can gain a lot of speed, and all of a sudden you've got to be way over to the side, you kind of don't want to be starting 1, 2, 3, or 4. You want to see some racers go down at speed and know how that's going to run.
Right.
And then your coach will go, hey, you really got to set this up more than you thought, more than we talked about in inspection.
Are you looking at the gates on the way down? Where are your eyes?
You're looking quite a bit ahead. In giant slalom, usually... a couple gates ahead. And
you're visually picturing the gate and things just follow
driving.
That. Right.
It's a lot like driving.
Right, you go where you look.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've got one off to an outlier over here off to the side,
you see people's head turning.
You had better turn your head and make visual contact with it.
Yeah.
Right. How much variation is there between slalom and downhill in terms of the... Slalom is more concentrated, I'm assuming, on the turns. Downhill is more concentrated on the speed.
Right.
There are gates, nonetheless, in the downhill.
You have to look quite far ahead in downhill. Even
Right.
so, for, say, within 2 gates of downhill, you could set a whole 60-gate slalom course because the turns are really quick.
Right.
So in a downhill, you're looking ahead at terrain, and you're looking, you're covering so much distance in downhill that sometimes you use landmarks for your to know what direction you're going to go. I remember inspecting downhills, and there would be a big jump, and you knew you were going to fly far. But as soon as you landed, you had to land in the right spot so you could be set up for the next turn and make the gate. And you can't obviously see that next gate because you're coming over a knoll. You're blind. So sometimes the coaches would say, okay, line up with that tree, you know, in the distance, or line up with that building in the distance, or something in the distance.
That follows the general strike of the course.
You don't do that in slalom.
So, well, I guess not.
Because it's right there.
It's right there, and it happens too quick.
Yeah.
Who are these course setter guys? Former skiers, crazy people, coaches?
Coaches.
Is there a committee of people that do this? What's the procedure?
I don't know exactly how it's done now, but basically each country gets a chance to set the course. The coach sets the course. And the more winning of a country it used to be, the more the coach has got an opportunity to set. I think it's a little bit more random now. And so I think that they take turns from country to country setting.
Will it change during the course of the day? Course is set for that run. Second run's different?
Well, yeah, first and second run are set by different course setters.
Okay.
Yeah. So they might say, okay, the first run of the women's slalom is set by an Austrian coach, and maybe the Austrian women are better at straight, fast courses, and he'll set for his team.
And, if he has the chance, yeah.
Right.
So course gates are fiberglass or plastic?
They're plastic, and they have a hinge at the base of the gate, which is a hard rubber sort of hinge, and then beneath the snow is it looks like a big threaded screw.
A helix.
A helix.
A helix anchor.
And they take a drill with a big bit on it, and they go about 2 feet into the snow, about 1.5 feet maybe, and they put the gate in.
Screw their gate down into.
And it's important that that hinge is flush, because if you hook a gate underneath that, it could be
bad deal. Yeah. So they may have to go out and maintenance a gate between a run.
Well, sometimes if there's not a lot of snow.
If somebody scrapes the snow around it.
There's been times I've raced on, they've just froze 3 inches of snow. And the gate's 1.5 feet long, so they basically drill into the earth, put the gate into the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
If you hang a tip on the gate, does it break easily, or you break first?
It depends. Lindsey Vonn hooked a tip, and I think that's a big reason why she had a shin injury. Like you can, you're going fast, and it's like hooking something. So all of a sudden there's a change in direction, and all the forces are going in a different direction. In a downhill, if you hook a tip, and it has happened, I mean it's ugly because it's a spinning crash when you hook a tip, and it's bad news.
Oh yeah, a lot of terrible orthopedic injury as a result of that. So you get down the course. You come to the bottom of the hill. How aware are you of the quality of what you just did? Can you tell I had a bad... You probably have some perception of whether you just screwed this thing up or whether it was a fast run for you personally.
For me personally, I could tell if I had a clean run. But I have to say that some of the runs where I just didn't even want to look at the scoreboard, it was like, oh my God, I suck so bad. And your buddy is in the finish stall, and they're like, no, look, you're winning. And you're like...
Right. So sometimes your perception is not necessarily honest.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's tricky in ski racing what your perception could be. You could feel smooth, like I had the cleanest run, and you're just dog slow. And all your buddies who were fast, you have feedback from your teammates. How'd you feel on your run? I felt terrible. I felt out of control. I was offline. I was sliding. Well, they're in third place, and you didn't get a second run because you were smooth and sweet and clean, and so it's a tough one.
Right. So tell us about the differences between a meet at the Olympic level and a lower level competition. You'd mentioned earlier the World Cup Series. These are the competitions that are at an international level, I'm assuming, that actually whose points count toward placement.
Right.
In the quadrennium here, right?
Right.
So how would a lower level meet be conducted as in contrast to the complexity of the Olympics? Is the judging a little more casual? Are the facilities a little less opulent? What's your impression of the difference?
This thing called the clock is a very simple thing to
Right.
operate, and the race runs the same.
Right.
From a lower level race
Timing is
to
timing.
the Olympics, timing is timing. That's one of the things I love about the sport. There's no subjective
Right.
judging. That's what I love about ski racing. There's no one
As
to blame
opposed
but the racer.
to what is it on the moguls?
The moguls you have to have some form.
What's the name of the event? I apologize.
Mogul skiing. The mogul event.
Mogul event.
Freestyle.
Freestyle. That's
Yeah.
it. They call it freestyle. There's a subjective judging component. How beautifully you accomplished your jump
Exactly.
or something like that. But downhill's just the time.
Yeah. it's just
Who
the time.
won?
Who won?
Who
was the
lifted the most weight?
fastest? Yeah.
Who went down the hill the fastest?
Right. Who was the first through the finish line?
Right.
It's very objective.
Right.
So in the lower level events, it's the same. The seating is very similar. The cool thing about ski racing is the point system is universal. So if you are a 16-year-old skier and you're skiing on the regional level, your point ranking will give you a world ranking against the best skier in the world. The formula that they use.
Right. And the points are absolute.
Mm-hmm.
There's no curve on them.
No,
Right.
there's not. And they average your 2 best results of the year, and that's how you're ranked in the world for the season. That's how it used to be. There's a FIS ranking, and then, there's a ranking of whatever series you're racing. Like in the United States, kind of.
That would take the difficulty of the hill into account, I'm assuming.
Not. Well,
Or does the
there's
time reflect it?
guidelines for the guidelines, but for a slalom, the hill for FIS race has to be a certain steepness. There has to be a certain number of gates. There has to be a certain amount of vertical.
So they all, in order for their points to even count, they have to comply to these minimum
And the
standards.
hills have to be what they call homologated. So in order to have a FIS race, the hill has to be a homologated hill, which means it's been, stamped. You can have a race on this hill.
Right.
You can world rank people off this hill.
Right.
It's a pretty cool system. I like it. And so every kid can find out how they stack up next to Lindsey Vonn. Lindsey Vonn's the best in the world. Her points are 0. You start off your skiing career with, when I was skiing, it was 500 points. Okay? And so in my first race, I had to start last because I was a 500 point holder. And then maybe in that race, according to the calculations, I might have gotten a 250 point race. So my points are 250. So maybe in the next race, I might be, instead of starting last, starting in the middle of the pack. Then I start getting better. So maybe in the next race, I scored a point race of 100. And so now they're averaging my 250 with my 100. Now in the next race, my start will be better because maybe my points now are like 175. And you work your way up like that.
Right.
And then, so once you start winning like NORAMs, then that's when the U.S. ski team's looking at you, or your top 10. And that's when you move on to Europa Cup, which is like the minor leagues. And then once you start winning Europa Cups, then you get into the World Cup.
So as you move up in rankings, how's your handling at the meet change? You'd mentioned, for instance, earlier, ski reps that might function to handle equipment issues during the meet. That's obviously not going to be available to lower level skiers, right? When is a rep, and by rep we're talking about Rossignol,
Right.
right? The guys that make the equipment start handling their equipment on you at the race.
Exactly.
Okay. They wax the skis.
They file the skis, they wax the skis, they get them prepared so that you can perform at your best.
The bindings are all checked by them.
Bindings are checked so your ski doesn't fly off, you don't break your leg. Your boots, there's lots of parts to the boots that need to be working. Your poles have to be, the straps have to be on, and actually for downhill, the bend in the poles is usually like a custom bend. So your reps help you with all those things.
When does a rep become available to somebody? At what level?
I think you basically the reps. I remember once I made the U.S. ski team, I had a rep.
But not
actually, I
prior to that.
remember racing Europa Cup, and I was prepping my own skis at that time.
So you've got to be way on up in the pile before
in the pile before you have a rep.
Right.
And someone like Lindsey Vonn, she's got her Red Bull team, and that includes her ski preparation. I don't know if that's part of the Red Bull team, but she's got trainers and massage therapists and everything supplied to her through them.
Mm-hmm.
So
just because of the sponsorship. Well, let's talk a little bit about the equipment. These are going to be extremely stupid questions. A lot of people watching this are going to say, "Rippetoe, you dumbass." I don't ski. What are the differences between downhill skis, slalom skis, giant slalom skis, super giant slalom skis, and cross-country skis, and freestyle skis,
all right,
and snowboards?
Okay, so
wow, we're here.
Wow.
That's how
let's
stupid.
start with my specialty, and that's the easiest way to say it is that in downhill, the skis are long, and in slalom, the skis are shorter.
Because of the time it takes to make them turn.
Right, and the stability
The
factor.
radius from your foot to the end of the ski, front and back, has to be shorter if they're going to turn sharp.
That's true, and the shape of the ski.
What is the difference in the shape?
Well, in a slalom ski and a giant slalom ski, you're making more turns, so you're going to have a narrower waist to hold on ice and a little bit wider tip, and that's going to help.
Front and back?
You want it to look like an hourglass,
right.
A little bit. The World Cup has put limits on how much shape your ski can have, because the more hourglass shaped it is to a point, the easier it is to turn, and how short a ski can be for the technical events, which is interesting because when I was skiing, it was like the longer, the faster, the longer. The technical events are slalom and giant slalom, and the speed events are considered super G and downhill.
Okay.
Yeah, and so in downhill, you don't want to be catching edges, and the ski is long. I'm not sure what I remember. I skied downhill on a 215 centimeter ski. So 2 meters and a little bit.
Right.
It was a long ski, and it's just a stable ski. It's a 2x4. It's stiff, and
What if it's too long?
It's hard to turn. It's very hard to turn.
And if it's too short?
It's unstable.
It's unstable.
Yeah.
So there's a median in there.
Yep.
With obviously drag is a component. If it's too long, probably there's more drag on the ski. Is that correct?
If it's too long, all the skis are cambered, and they can be stiff. And so if you can't put enough force on the ski to decamber it to make the turn, then it's not going to turn for you.
Because it won't bite the whole edge.
You won't get the edge on the ground to make the direction change. But someone
That'd have to do with the stiffness and the camber, right?
and the length. You're having to just turn more volume of substance. Lindsey Vonn is skiing on men's skis, and I think that's one of the reasons she's so fast. She's got
What
the
are the
strength.
differences between men's and women's ski?
Well, when I was racing, the women would skate maybe 5 centimeters longer.
Women use longer skis.
Men use longer skis.
Men use longer skis.
Yeah, because they're heavier, bigger, stronger generally.
How much heavier would they be?
The skis?
Yes.
It's not a weight thing so much. It's more.
Is there a weight limit in the skis?
No, it has nothing to do with weight. It's more dimension.
It wouldn't have a density of the material. Doesn't really make any difference.
It's more dimensions of the ski and the length of the ski. Yeah, and then there's in the technical events, you can't have too short of a ski. There's a minimum how small your ski can be. Same in slalom.
Well, what about freestyle?
I don't know much about freestyle, but in general, the skis are a little bit shorter, and
because of the way they handle it.
Yeah, and they usually have probably more. They ski more on one type of ski instead of a ski racer. Where you've got your slalom skis, your GS skis, you got your Super G skis and your downhill skis, and you come to a downhill that looks really turny, and you're thinking, wow, maybe I'll jump on my Super G skis for this one because it's turny. So it's tactical on what equipment you're gonna choose. It's kind of like car racing, like what tires you're gonna put on the car.
Right. Changes with the conditions.
It changes with the conditions.
What about the jumping events? I would imagine that you want a bunch of drag, so you probably want a wide, flat
ski. And I'm sure they have some dimension specifics and protocol for that. All I know about the jumping is in '94 I roomed with two combined skiers where they jump and then they do a 10K cross country. And
so the Nordic combined, I was going to ask you about that. Nordic combined is jumping
and then a 10K
and a cross country event, right?
These guys were little. They were young little guys, probably weighed 120, but they can fly.
Yeah.
They can fly. And when you go to, if you ever get a chance to go to a ski jumping event and see it, it's pretty amazing. First of all, the steepness of the in-run is crazy.
Yeah.
Because it looks like you're skiing straight into a flat little square. The outrun is steep and long, and the sound, the auditory experience of watching this is amazing. The sound of them ripping through the air when they're on the snow, and then once they take off, the difference in the sound, and then the slap when they land is really cool. It's really cool. And I'll never forget, I was in Park City, Utah, and the junior team was trained, the kids were trained, the local kids were trained. There was this kid, and he's sitting, there's this little bar they have you sit on, right before you stand up to take off. And I'm standing looking down, I've walked up, and this kid's getting ready to go, and his parents look like little ants, down there watching. And I look at this kid, and I go, how you feeling, buddy? He's like, looking at me, so irritated at me, like, fine,
Why would you ask?
Why would you ask? Are you scared? He's like, no. And then he pushed off. The kid flew forever. He almost landed on the flats. I was like, my God, his parents are trying to get rid of him, And they're so relaxed and so adapted to it. And the cool thing is that these little 6-year-olds, they're flying the farthest.
Yeah.
They're really flying farther or as far as some of the best flyers in the world, ski jumpers in the world, because they're so tiny.
Their body weight is.
They're like a leaf.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I guess all of these types of things are extremely restricted to locations where it's available.
Yeah.
There's not any ski jumpers from North Texas.
No.
As a matter of fact, I happen to know there aren't.
Okay.
So.
You never know. Sometimes they get bored and find things to do.
So, the equipment obviously interacts with the snow. Let's talk about the snow for it. This is probably something that you know so well. You've got, like the Finns have got like 13 different words for snow.
Yeah.
Right? We just call it snow here.
Yeah, pretty much.
I would imagine that you're quite familiar with the way different grades of snow react with your skis on the hill. So it's things vary with temperature, they vary with moisture content,
shape of the ice crystal,
shape of the ice crystals, all of that stuff. What's your? Do you like fake snow? Do you?
I like man-made snow. It's hard to ski on. It's kind of like cardboard. What I can tell you about the ski races now is that they're icy. Pick up.
Intentionally?
Yes.
They spray water.
They do a thing called an injection, and it looks like a sprinkler system, and they set it down in the snow, and they spray water into the snow, and the water rises up to the top and freezes, and it's like nothing you've ever experienced. I remember the first race I skied on an injected treated snow. I don't think I bit my edge in at all. It was so icy. It was like skiing on a marble.
So this just speeds the whole course up.
Well, it speeds
quite
the course up, but it also makes it fair. More fair from start number 1 to start number 60.
Because the hill is going to change over 60 runs, right?
If it's soft.
If it's soft.
But the harder it is, the less it changes, and that's their goal.
I see.
And if you're the best skier in the world, you need to deal with whatever snow we're putting in front of you.
Right.
So that's the way it works.
Right.
It's a freak thing if you have soft snow these days in a race, and they might have it in Vancouver this time because it's been so warm and there's been so much snow at the top, rain in the middle, hot at the bottom. The that you may see a dark horse win just because, you know, a lot of the consistent World Cup skiers that are getting the press are winning on that injected snow every race.
So, and that's all they're used to.
That's what they perform.
And their times are dependent on that.
It could be, but then there's some people like, for me, a person from California, or for someone like Julia Mancuso, we've skied in what we call Sierra cement, soft snow. We've done a lot of skiing in soft, new snow. And that gives a skier a real feel for the snow. Like, you just put enough edge in to bite. That's where a soft snow skier has an advantage.
Right.
Versus an eastern coast skier, you know, it's cold, freezing rain back there, and they're skiing on ice all the time. And for them, it's double or nothing. They edge or they're not, and so they hit it hard every time they edge. They usually have an advantage once they get to the World Cup level.
Right. So, at high levels, if you're on the U.S. ski team, you're at the Olympics. You mentioned at some point to me that there was quite a bit of training that goes into your preparation for the event that doesn't actually involve skiing. You're taught to deal with the media,
right,
for instance. One of the most irritating things about the Olympics, modern Olympics coverage, and I've noticed that it's been a little bit better for the Winter Olympics this year, is the preponderance of stupid bullshit that is, it's just so ingrained into the coverage. Silly questions, things that are taking up a lot of airtime that are completely off topic from the event, and they'll maybe end up in the hours where the coverage actually showing 15 minutes worth of actual competition, and then we got to see somebody's mother-in-law with cancer and how she feels about her cousin being in the Olympics, or that kind of shit. You have to be interviewed by these morons. Mm-hmm. What do they tell you to do? There's some specific things you're instructed to do, aren't they? Mm-hmm.
Well, the first thing is to not be frustrated by their stupid questions and not to be a smartass.
How does it? Eva,
it doesn't come off well when you're a smartass.
You've just won the bronze medal. How do you feel?
Pissed I didn't get the gold.
Yeah, well, yeah, you can't say that, can you?
No.
So.
You have to be positive.
God, I cannot imagine dealing with these moron questions. So they teach you how to do it, don't they? What do they teach you?
Well, I was taught never to say no comment. I was taught to try not to use slang. One of the guy skiers that you know, you hear guys come down and they'll be interviewed. How was your run? It was awesome. You know, like, how many times have we heard that? So they want you to kind of describe. Try to be more descriptive in the face of an utterly ridiculous question. Yeah. So, for instance, say I won a bronze medal, and the person, how do you feel about winning a bronze medal? Well, I personally would say I'm really happy to be in the medal count. I was really hoping for a gold medal, and yeah, I've obviously really wanted the gold medal, but I'm feeling like a bronze medal is a success and something that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Wow.
But you have to tell the public what you want them to know. Like, you know, I sit on an airplane, and I didn't win a medal in the Olympics, and I sit on an airplane, the person goes, so what do? You get in a conversation with someone. So you went to the Olympics. Cool. Yeah. Did you get the gold? And you just want to punch their lights out. I'm sorry, I didn't get the gold.
I'm sorry.
There was only one there.
And I'm sorry I disappointed you personally.
Yeah.
But
you hear that a million times.
Oh, God.
So it's tough. Well, and then the other thing the press says, which I have to say, is the day before the race, they go, how do you think you're going to do tomorrow? I'm like, that's what the race is for! I'm not a weatherman. I don't make predictions.
I don't know. I'm going to try to win it, but I don't know who else is going to do well.
That's why we're having the timing set up.
That's why we do this.
This whole thing's happening. We're going to find out who's
That's
going to win.
The nature of the competition. Yeah. There are a lot of sports in the Winter Olympics that we people, most people watching this, have really got no personal experience with it all, and we get to see the biathlon once every 4 years. It fascinates me, but it is so crazy. The nature of that sport is cool. It's really interesting. It's really interesting. Where does some of the interesting winter sports that we don't have much experience with, especially around here, are of interest in that. Where do the competitors come from? Where do you get a biathlon guy? Where does he?
Probably a northern European country like Sweden, Norway. You know, I think
really
some of those sports
culture up there, though.
Yeah, but it's like you have to think of it. The skiing, the cross country skiing was transportation,
right?
And the shooting was potentially hunting.
The hunting.
So
that's why the sport is so cool to us, because it makes a lot of sense.
And it's really amazing how the guy's skiing for his life. And then he's got to get settled and shoot at a target.
He's got to drop his heart rate from 170.
Right. And that's why beta blockers
if he doesn't drop his heart
on
rate,
their banned drug list. You'd think,
right.
Oh, what's a beta blocker going to do for an alpine skier? You want to be sharp and up.
Right. But you can see how it would be.
But you can see how a beta blocker for one of those guys would really help them drop their heart rate and get steady.
And I don't even know that they do drop their heart rate. I just know that they somehow manage to be still.
They try.
While they shoot.
They try to get as still as they can. But if your heart is beating, that gun is going off target.
Of course it is. It's moving all over everywhere. But it's somehow they've learned how to get that still and keep it still for the shoot. And those guys are so good at handling that equipment. They're just it's amazing to watch. It really is an amazing.
But the other thing, Rip, is that as much as I was a Winter Olympian, and even being on the U.S. ski team, how little I knew as an alpine skier about people on the same team who are cross-country skiers or jumpers or freestyle. And that's kind of one of the things that's the beauty of the Olympics, is that you're there with these other Winter Olympians and you learn their sport.
Right.
I didn't learn about ski jumping until I was in Lillehammer, and I went and watched my roommates jump.
Of course not. You just... When would there have been time?
It's all about
busy.
Me.
You're busy getting your deal done. Sure.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so you were in a bobsled at one point, weren't you? I have one of my kids that used to train with us up here, Brett Crossland, did an internship at Lake Placid, and said something to the effect that being in the bobsleigh, broke his ankle on the only run he did, and he says it's the scariest thing he's ever done. It's like being lowered head first into a blender or something like that. It was just an absolute crazy house in the sled. And you got a chance to do that.
Yeah. So actually, when they asked me to do it off-site, hey, Eva,
the video's available on YouTube, by the way.
Yeah.
And
under
look up Eva bobsled or something like that.
So off-site, they're like, hey, you want to do this piece? We're going to do a piece on the Park City bobsled course. And I was like, sure. So I head down there, and the more I learned about what we were about to do, the more I was thinking, what in the world, why did I say yes? Because this is nuts. And it was me and Peekaboo Street and Diane Roth-Steinratter and, excuse me, I should say Diane Roth. I don't know what your name is anymore, Diane. And then the driver for the coach for the Jamaican bobsled team. And
it's like an enormous joke, isn't it?
It was an enormous joke, and then the guy starts talking about the disclaimers, like, well, yeah, he's going down the list, and I'm just like, you're kidding me. And then we start filming our little gig, and the girls were like, did you eat breakfast? I was like, yeah, I ate breakfast. And they're like, oh, great, you're going to vomit on us. And I was in the front. And so the closer I got to getting into that thing, the more I was like, this was a stupid idea. This was a really stupid idea. But I trusted the guy that we rode with, and we actually got up to speed. We really got going. And it does feel like they push you off, and at first you're just bumping along on the ice. But you pick up speed so fast, and when you go into those curves, they teach you to shrug your shoulders so that when your head slams against the sled, you protect your neck. I'm surprised they don't have more neck protection. And it's violent. It's like someone puts you in a jar and just shakes you up. And you're looking down the course, and the curves don't look like curves. They look like right angles. Like you're going to run straight
coming up real quick.
A wall. And then when you finally do hit it, it's so violent. You get so whipped That
Did they say what the G-force inside one of these things was?
I
wonder what it is.
I think they told me and I just forgot. It's you get
Some
pretty squished.
aircraft-like experience.
I can tell you that we took 3 runs, and I was really sore the next day. I felt like I had done some ridiculous workout. I was sore everywhere. Because you're just bracing yourself in there. And especially if you don't have the experience. I think probably an experienced bobsledder knows where he can be loose and
where he can
has
relax
to
and where he has to tighten up.
We were tight the whole time.
Right.
You're hanging on. And then Peekaboo is in the back, and the sled's open in the back. And she's hanging on, and she's basically who's holding everyone in. So you had to give her a good tip.
$5, $10.
Yeah.
Something like that. The moguls. We were talking about the moguls last night. We're in a particular point during the coverage of the Olympics where they're showing a lot of moguls. In the freestyle, I was wondering, how did they build the moguls onto the side of the hill? And you're telling me those are snow. They're not earthen. They're not part of the hill construction. They're built up with the plow.
Yep.
So how does that work?
Well, they have a technique where they crisscross the plow and they plow the snow in. And Johnny Mosley, if you're watching this, I'm really sorry if I got this wrong, but and they shape it into a pretty tight protocol, the distance between the moguls and everything. So it's a very uniform course.
Do men and women run on the same moguls?
Yeah.
It would seem like a hell of a lot of work to change it.
No,
because that probably takes a long time to build that course.
And building the jumps and then having the athletes go off the jumps and seeing how the landings are and all that good stuff, that takes some adjustment and some peeling off of the, some shoveling and some adjustments. So, it's definitely it's a FIS homologated hill, just like ski racing.
What about curling? The only time anybody ever gets to see this interesting sport is at the Winter Olympics, because the wide world of sports is gone. Remember Wide World of Sports when you were little?
I don't watch curling.
You don't watch curling?
No.
It's just too slow, isn't it?
It's too slow.
Shuffleboard.
I'm too ADD for it.
I understand.
The best janitors in the world.
Just so you curlers know.
I'm sorry.
Man, I'm on your side, okay? I think it's cool.
Yeah, I just like spinning rocks down the ice and sweeping in front of them. I think it's just bananas.
It's the granite that I like.
The granite's cool. I've seen them. They're very cool. But I don't know. I'd rather play bocce ball.
So what about speed skating? What do you know about speed skating? This is one of those events that it's just interesting to watch because of the rhythms that get established on the ice, and it looks like it'd be fun to make that movement. And I know it's a hell of a bunch of work, and it's a bunch of lower body strength involved in it, but it's just such a beautiful, fluid, graceful sport to watch at that speed.
I like it because it's pure. It's the clock and the athlete, and that's it.
Right.
And they run heats, and they have other athletes. Well, short track, it's heats, and may the best man win. I think in short track, you've got a lot of...
a bunch of racing strategy involved.
A lot of strategy. People fall all the time. In the long distance track, it's a little bit more pure because it's the clock and the skater. And I guess there can be fouls and so forth in that, but I really love it, and I think the skaters, their legs are huge.
Yeah.
And it hurts. I think that they're suffering at the end of these races.
Long ago, our intel on Eric Hayden was 600 for 20 squatter.
I believe it.
Maybe Eric could call.
But their upper bodies are skinny.
Yeah, they
don't want to carry any extra weight on the top.
They don't do a lot of pressing.
So they're like
right.
Yeah.
Right, and you can see the reason for that. Yeah. That makes obvious sense in the context of the sport.
And they're not falling in any particular way where they're going to blow out a shoulder. Like a ski racer is more of a tuggle, or you can pull a shoulder, and you've got the poles to plant, so you have more reason to be more evened out.
We'd spoken earlier, Nordic combined. That's an interesting deal. Where did that originate, and what's the thinking there? It's just a test of not downhill ability, but jumping ability of all things, and cross country ability.
It's a little bit like combined in alpine skiing, where you've got the fastest event and the tightest turn event put together, because you want to see who the best
Just
skier
two extremes.
on two extremes, and that's the same thing in the combined, the extreme of jumping and really in the Nordic combined, it's really two different sports that you're training.
It is completely.
It's like being a 10K runner and then coming over and doing the high jump or something. Mm-hmm. It's or pole vaulting. That would be more.
And that's why I just don't see the nature of the combination. It must have. There must be a history there that that is not clear to my stupid
Well, I think
ass.
the towns where all these sports occurred, like if you go to Norway, or there's this in Oslo, it's based around a big ski jump. Like there's ski jumps. That's what the kids do to play. Mm-hmm. I think it's still based around those countries where, what did you do to get to work? Well, I cross-country skied. And what did the kids do for fun? Well, they jumped. And it kind of came together like that. Mm-hmm. So.
Interesting. What the United States as a team, the U.S. Olympic team, shows strongly in what sports and poorly in what sports?
For the U.S.?
Yes.
Well, they're strong in alpine skiing right now. They're strong in speed skating. They're weaker in the Nordic events.
Although we have
we have a couple guys coming up, and you might see some people coming up.
We have any jumpers?
We have some jumpers. Yeah. It's sad to say, but it's kind of based on the visibility of the sport. Mm-hmm. And
so biathlon we don't even exist in biathlon. It's like weightlifting, probably.
Well, possibly. I don't want to bum anyone out if we've got some hot biathlete that's going to win a gold. But in general, it's tougher on those guys.
Just so you'll know.
It's tougher on those guys because there's not much visibility. Like when you're 14 years old and you're thinking, okay, I've been living in a ski town my whole life. I alpine ski and I'm pretty good at that, but I also am a pretty good jumper. Which way am I going to go? They're probably going to go to the alpines. There's more there's more visibility. You're going to
there's more money, more sponsorship opportunity.
Everything. And
venues, contests, everything about it is.
That's the bummer because the Nordic skiers work every bit as hard as the alpine skiers do. And they just don't get the visibility, and it sucks.
And it's that way with lots of sports all over the Olympics, isn't it? It's just.
And that's it's frustrating with television. I remember watching the Summer Olympics when they allowed our pro basketball players to play in the Olympics, and and you're watching opening ceremonies, and they're filming Shaq.
Right.
Like, what about the shot putter whose family mortgaged their house for them to be there,
Utterly stupid, isn't it? Yeah. Because we see basketball for
all the time.
9 months of the year anyway. But I want to watch the hammer throw.
Right.
I want to watch the guys throw the hammer. I want to see the heavy field events.
Right.
And you don't get to see it.
You don't know who they are, and they're losing money being there at the games.
Right.
All they're getting is like the swag. When you get to the Olympics, you get about $5,000 worth of clothes and shoes and stuff, and that's probably what they're getting. And if they are sponsored, they're probably top 5 in the world, And so, that's a bummer for them.
It is. It's a bad deal. So, my hat's off to the biathletes.
Yeah.
Those guys are cool.
And all those cross-country
and I like
guys.
the curling guys. I know you don't care about that, but same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. The curling guys are cool.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Oh, God, we got all kinds of stuff we could keep talking about, but I think probably it'd be best to keep this to a manageable length. And I think we've covered some stuff that probably most people don't get to hear people at your level talk about. Anything else you'd like to discuss?
Well, there's one important thing that I'd like to discuss, and it depends on how they're going to televise ski racing.
Right.
But you'll notice everyone has a bib number.
Right.
And in the first run, it goes by number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But sometimes with the amount of time that the syndicate television is given to film and the amount of commercials they have to run, you may see the beginning of the race start with number 7. And that's just because they didn't film number 1 through number 6. So you need to know that.
Is there an advantage to being placed at a certain position in the rut?
It depends on the conditions. If it's really slick, it's good to run in the beginning. If it's softer, the track gets faster as you go, so you want to be farther back.
Right.
But sometimes those things are out of your hands. In the technical events, the top 30 are flipped. So you'll see 30th place go first and first place go last. And that's basically was made up for television to make the sport more dramatic.
How much does television coverage affect the way the Olympics as a whole are conducted in terms of the on-the-ground management of the sport right then?
It's a big factor.
Does it affect it quite a bit?
It's a big factor. The reason the speed events are first is because they have to have cameras over 2 miles versus the slalom. They have cameras over 500 meters, you know?
Right.
So it's the venues get smaller, and I think that they start big and they get smaller as they go through the Olympics.
Well, if you notice the luge coverage, that luge run was probably not constructed the way it should have been. And there's a lot of difficulty in covering that for TV because of the multiple cameras that are needed, the necessity to sweep through here. It gets to the point where every single one of them looks exactly the same to the untrained eye. Mm-hmm. And it's fun to watch, but for the first 3 or 4, because they are essentially, to a layperson, indistinguishable one from another, right, unless there's some big disaster that takes place down in the middle of the chute. So
right.
The sliding sports are kind of tough for us to watch. And I'm wondering how much effect TV has on them.
Luckily in the sliding sports, you know, you're going to know where you have to set the cameras, and it's the same every time. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a little trickier when you get into alpine skiing where the course is going to be switched on the second run. But you're looking at a group of turns versus one turn.
Would TV coverage influence the course design?
It shouldn't.
On the sliding things?
It shouldn't. No, that comes after. But, you know, now when I think back on the luge accident they had, you know, maybe there wasn't a wall there because they needed a camera to see through there. You never know.
Never know. Could be.
So, and there used to be times where I was in the starting gate and I couldn't believe we were running the race because I was about to do a super G or a downhill where I was going to go at pretty high speed, and the visibility was no more than 20 feet. And it's like, why are we running this race? Well, television needs it on. So
you would think they couldn't.
That's changed now. There's delegates that basically.
If the visibility is that low, how are they filming you?
Well, and then there's another thing. Like if it's too low and they can't film you, then they'll, oh yeah, let's call off the race. But say the visibility is terrible the first half, and then they could get some, you know, something on the bottom. Then they would want to have the race for television. In Europe, in the U.S., we don't. You know, they film every World Cup race in Europe, ski race, top to bottom, every athlete. Mm-hmm. And it's a big deal. That's what people do on weekends is they sit there and watch ski races. And it's like our big sports that we watch here, football and basketball. That's what ski racing is. And Lindsey Vonn is way more famous, I'm sure, in Europe than she is here in the States. Now she's probably equaled it out. But for me, I was, you know, famous person in Europe, and people wouldn't take a second look at me here. So
I look at you all the time, honey. Thank you for coming. I sure did enjoy talking to you today, and I hope that everybody watching today got something out of this interview that they can take with them to TV tonight and go from the computer to TV and enjoy the Olympics a little bit more because of Eva's help. Thank you very much for being here today. Appreciate it. Thank you for being with us on the Starting Strength series.